Aloha and welcome back to another episode of the Ohana Packers Edition podcast. The podcast where two dudes, Iowa Joe and me, Mike, recap everything going on with the Green Bay Packers. Joe, they've done it.
And now Mike just froze.
I'm a mess today. It's all a mess today. Had a flat tire going to the North Shore. Um, Found out it's not just this. I can't plug it. There's a hole in the sidewall and stuff. It's been a day, but
Oh, sidewall, then somebody's after you because that's usually a
I think it was slow leaking through where the nail went, and then I think the nail fell out, so it like rapid depressure and cut the side or something like that because the cuts on the inside sidewall. So yeah, no mafia hit squad or a very discreet mafia hit squad, but either way, we are here to talk about the Packers. Joe, for the first time in 2025, we have seen this team win a football game. And I know it's the preseason, it doesn't count to some people, but I mean, that was about as exciting as you could get for a preseason football game in terms of how the thing went down at the end.
yeah. I mean, there's still a lot of division over it because was it a catch? Wasn't it a catch? All that stuff. And yeah, it's just a preseason game, but it was a weird way for a preseason game to end. If that was a regular season game or even a playoff game, I think there'd be a lot more going on than what there is. But I mean, I could see it both ways, but it did look like he didn't complete the catch. It was kind of one of them Dez Bryant moments where, he may got the 2 feet, but as he was going down, the ball started rolling loose, and then when he hit the ground, the ball rolled. So, I mean, I'll take it as a Packer fan saying it was a no catch, but if we were on the end of that other end of that, I would fully call it a catch. But yeah, it was, and really, it was a better second half than a first half.
Yeah.
That's for sure. The first half they definitely came back out like last week and just looked flat. The second half they started playing a little bit better. And I know people are going to say, "Oh, well, but Indy was playing their starters and the Packers weren't playing everybody." It's like, "Yeah, but you kind of hope your backups can play just as well against the starters because those are the guys that you got to put in if there's an injury or something else. So you want to see them be able to perform just as well as a backup as a starter would. So I don't get it. I mean, again, I'm glad this stuff is happening in the preseason more than it is in season, but at least it looked a little bit better in the second half than in the first half. And I think I lost Mike again.
Okay. My USB ports are being touchy, so touchy today, so I'm going to try not to shake the table, look at the table, or do anything, but I agree. It, I had to rewatch it because I was like kind of following it during the day. I only got to see the first quarter. Like you said, the first half can be summed up in Matt LaFleur looking like basically all he wanted to do was fight Anthony Belton coming off the field for just so many boneheaded mistakes. And honestly, like, yes, a lot of Belton stuff was bad, but it did feel like that was like a Belton, you're taking one for the whole team because everyone was kind of just taking a dump behind the shed kind of thing. Because, I mean, you had the Emmanuel Wilson fumble, you had a missed field goal, you just woeful tackling from seventh year veterans and all kinds of things that you're just like we were talking about last week where it's like things you don't want to see at this point of a preseason where it's like, you don't mind mistakes from young guys where they're like not in a position they played in college or they're learning the playbook and you make those kind of mental mistakes, but we can't line up correctly. You get after the whistle penalties, you fumble on a tackle, all that kind of stuff. And those are the ones that, and, some people say, like, is it bloviating by LaFleur? And I appreciate that he's treating preseason with a certain edge this year because I think he's not on the hot seat, but I think he senses the urgency where, we brought it up last week where they're playing Detroit week one. It's like Detroit is going to be ready for us. They may have lost some because both their coordinators left for head coaching jobs and this and that and all, but that's still the best team in the division by my book. You got to knock them off before you can say otherwise in terms of where the Packers stand with them. And I agree with kind of what LaFleur is pushing here, that what the team has done so far, it ain't gonna work come week one. Like, you're not gonna luck your way into a win week one. So I appreciated seeing what we saw out of LaFleur, but yeah, it was almost like Dudley Do Right um, manner of getting the win this game. But like you said, they did buckle down in the second half. You saw some pretty solid performances from a lot of guys who are battling for those lower tier roster spots. Um, I guess, who was your highlight of the game, Joe?
Offensive wise, I got to say, I'm just going to put the running backs in there because, you know, Manuel Wilson looked pretty good. Marshawn Lloyd, prior to the injury, looked pretty good. Blanking. Abby Conda looked pretty good. And then Amar Johnson looked pretty good. So I got to give it to those guys. Somewhat some of the receivers, because even though I didn't get to watch the first part of it because I tried to. I, I think something is trying to keep me from going to Wisconsin tomorrow because first it's my car goes and does its thing. Then this past week I started feeling like getting a sinus infection. So I had to go do a walk-in clinic yesterday just to get something to take care, help me through. And so I was dealing with that and I didn't get home until like halfway through the first quarter or whatever. So I tried to listen to as much of it as I could, and it sounded like Julian Hicks, I think that's what his name is, was playing well and made a heck of a catch, but it ended up being out of bounds or something like that.
Nah, it was a catch, but it got negated by a holding penalty.
That's it. That's it. And then your boy Cornelius Johnson was looking pretty good on some things. So I mean, I got to give it to them, but I think I'm just going to round it out and say the running backs because they seem to be doing the best out of them all. Emmanuel Wilson was running hard. You could see the speed out of him. Abby Conda, I'm going to say his name like 100 different ways just because it's a weird last name.
Not
Um,
weird, just a lot of syllables.
a lot of syllables. Uh, you know, he showed something, and I one of these days I'm gonna have to, if he makes the roster, I'm gonna have to pull out my notebook again and go through this my report on him from a couple years ago for the draft stuff. Uh, because from what I remember, he had speed, but he was also that bruiser style back, and he showed it with a lot of his running that he was dragging guys, the pile with him. What was it? He scored 2 touchdowns, and both of them were hard earned touchdowns. And let's look at the stats real quick.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns over one each game.
Okay, yeah, he had 1 touchdown, but he had
But
12
yeah,
carries
both of,
for
like you said, he's either broke in tackles or pulled guys into the end zone to get them.
yeah, and averaged 3.6 on 12 carries for 43 yards, so that's pretty good. So yeah, I really got to say them. Marshawn Lloyd sounded like he was doing good up until that route, and I don't want to blame the defender on it so much, but it did remind me of kind of like a hip drop tackle. And so, like I said, I don't want to say that's what it
Yeah,
was, but just in the heat of the moment, it looked like it was one of them hip drops. It's like, ugh, this is not what he needs.
yeah. It sucks because believe it's the same hamstring he's been dealing with all of training camp, because he's had one that's kind of been a. I think that's why he missed earlier parts of training camp. And I rewatched it a couple times because I couldn't tell if he heard it he got hit or if it's because of how the guy kind of came in and took his legs out from behind him. And yeah, it's not a hip drop in the traditional sense of what they're trying to take out of the game kind of thing, but it's the guy tripped after Lloyd was trying to avoid the safety coming over from the middle of the field, and then the guy behind him was just trying to dive to take his ankles out, but because Lloyd stopped, he ended up going into the back of Lloyd's knees. And honestly, like, some people are like doing the whole injury prone, and I know we can talk a lot about people moaning about injury prone and stuff. Like,
There's one I definitely wanted to call out before the end of the
we'll
show.
we'll do that later. But that one, honestly, I know that a lot of people are going to be like, "Oh, you're just defending," but like, I'm kind of glad he only got out of there with the hamstring injury. I feel like it could have been a couple, like he could have had what happened to the Colts tackle who broke his ankle. He
Yeah.
could have blown a knee out, kind of thing. So, it's not great that he's missing more time, and LaFleur's kind of mum on if he'll be ready for Week 1. Honestly, if it's the same, I haven't been able to confirm it, but if it's the same hamstring that oh no, that's what it was. He had a groin and then a hamstring. But I don't know if it's the same hamstring that knocked him out of last year. But just let him get healthy and stuff. But yeah, I think people need to like recalibrate, how they label people as being, injury prone and stuff. But like you said, it was good to see that out of him because
The
that
only
wheel
thing I
route,
gotta say is Lloyd is starting to teeter on that
he's
edge
starting to, yeah.
because it seems to be the same end. The only thing that you can't count against it is the appendicitis because that's just a freak
Yeah,
incident, but it's starting to be the same type of things.
yeah. And
So
like I
he's
said, this
starting to
one,
teeter.
I'm kind of. It's not great, like you said. It's not great that it's another tick on his track record, but also, like I said, the way he got crumpled up after that catch, I was like, something was gonna happen to him, and it's not great that it's a soft tissue injury, but I'd rather it be that than a broken something that's
Right,
harder to come back.
right.
But I do agree with where you're coming from that he's kind of getting into that territory, but it was still great to see that play from him. I agree with you. Abanikanda has been really good this preseason. Just everything you want to see from one of those like bottom of the roster running backs where it's like he's not getting necessarily the best blocking from the shuffled O lines and stuff like that, but he's making his own magic happen.
It's gonna make decisions a lot harder.
And Wilson, like, he had the bad fumble, but then he comes back on the very next drive and catches that swing pass, takes it 32 yards. His fumble is one of those, like, it's one of those where it happens because he's such a hard guy to tackle and he doesn't go down on first contact kind of thing. You still can't fumble in the pile like that. But it's one of those where I'm like, it's not quite pitchers giving home runs up in training camp kind of thing, but it's sort of in that area where it's like, okay, like try push yourself in the preseason, see what you can do kind of thing. But also, like, you don't want to build up a reputation of being a fumbler. And then I'm going to do it. You brought him up first, but my guy Cornelius Johnson had a few really nice catches, none bigger than the fourth down conversion he had on the second to last scoring drive. And then, yeah, Hicks, you can, that, I know it was just one play, but with Hicks, you can see why they touted him and kept him around for as long as they have because they keep kind of saying, like, there's something there, the makings of a solid receiver, and you kind of hope that they can get a little more out of him. Defensively, I thought that in kind of limited opportunities, Bo Melton had another solid game. Your boy almost said Christian Welch had a solid game. Second on the team in tackles, pass defense. I thought he's always solid in coverage. I do think that's one of the benefits of him being 6'4" and like kind of blocky in terms of his build.
The thing about him in coverage, though, he kind of reminds me of AJ Hawk in a way, where they always seem to cut short the coverage and then do that stupid ass leap in the air like they're gonna block something. It's like just continue running and probably would have
I,
blocked it a
and
lot better.
and I do think that unlike AJ, I think with Welch, it's more of a he's still young and hasn't gotten to play enough where I think AJ knew like I'm toast either way and I'm gonna just see if I can get lucky here. With Welch, I think that he still has another level to be for like you said, for a coach to be like, dude, just keep it's the whole like you're running after a fly ball. If you think about jumping, don't like just keep running
Jumping
for
should
it.
be the last thing on your
Yeah.
mind. Am I foot and foot with this guy? Yes.
Yeah.
Is the ball in the air? Yes. Can I put up my hand on it without leaving my feet? Yes. There's your answer. Just put
Yeah.
your hand out.
Yeah. Unforced jumping never goes unpunished in football. It's a
It's like the
thing.
wide receivers that do the unnecessary jump in the air
Yeah.
for a pass when it's going to hit them square in the chest
And
anyway.
they drop it every time. But Otherwise, you had like Alessandre having a sack,
And a few pressures. He
and
had
a few
a pretty
pressures.
decent
Yeah.
game.
Um,
Stackhouse was pretty good. He even
yeah,
had the pass deflection.
he's made the roster. If he doesn't make the roster, there's some kind of off the field incident we don't know about. That's honestly, and I thought Oladapo had a solid game. I know he only had one tackle, but I thought his pass breakup on Tyler Warren was a really nice play. Undercut a crossing route, doesn't use his off arm to pull the tight end. He just kind of does the thing where you shoulder tug, not tug, but you kind of place your hand on the one shoulder and then you come around with the other hand to bat the ball. He did it
Yeah.
really well on that play. Same with Bo on his pass breakup. So some good stuff from some of the DBs. And then we'll get into the rest of them when we get into our next segment.
Well, I was trying to find it again. I should have done better to prepare for this, but I've been busy packing and doing other things
And try
today.
not to be felled by sinal infections.
But somebody posted on Blue Sky that they're probably not going to keep both Brinson and Stackhouse. It's like, why wouldn't they? They need the depth at D line anyway, and they're both playing solidly. Who is going to take their spot?
Because, yeah, if you look at it this way, you've got Clark, Wyatt, Brooks.
Wooden and Brooks.
And so, like, I think of those four, Clark, Wyatt, and Brooks are the three that are like pretty good to surefire locks in terms of making the roster. And then, you know, depending on what happens at edge, you've got Wooden, Stackhouse, and Brinson. And I do think Wooden's played well, but I don't think he's done anything that Brinson and Stackhouse haven't done, if that makes like we haven't seen. And not that you'd really, you can't really say that like a preseason breakout game matters because we've seen a lot of Vic Sotos and guys like that who have had
Right.
big preseason games. But either
Well, I'm
way,
not going
like,
to say it's impossible that they can't bring one of them back on the practice squad, but I think it's going to be a lot harder to get one of them through than, like a Wooden or somebody like that.
yeah, yeah, I agree. So it really just comes down to what happens at the other positions. But honestly, I think there were a lot of reasons made to keep more D linemen in this game than there were some of the back seven players, and that's where I was gonna go with my stinky cheese this week is or stale or just stinky cheese is
Yeah, we'll get into that the regular season.
yeah. But if we were doing a regular season pod, the Isaiah Simmons, like we're seeing why you haven't found a home, and like when you're 7 years into an NFL career, the light usually just doesn't come on. But I was hoping that with Halfley being the kind of imaginative and inventive guy that he could, craft a role kind of thing for him and stuff. And I know that Simmons had the interception in practice and, the Instagram page and the highlights had it in all the highlight packages and stuff. But it was just another week, another game where it's just like, I can't like the one good play I saw from Simmons was he made us a tackle in coverage 4 yards down the field. It's like you had the first play for the Colts where Simmons is like slow to read a crossing route out of the waggle, doesn't attack the receiver and gets like hedge blocked by the other receiver from upfield. He doesn't get out in coverage on another route. And if Daniel Jones put the ball on Tyler Warren, it might have been a walk-in touchdown because Simmons was toast by like 4 or 5 yards on the play. Missed tackles where he had guys at the line of scrimmage and stuff. And, some people are like, oh, but his special teams. To me, what does he do on special teams that Welch can't when Welch shows you there's some upside at his listed defensive position? And I joked about it on Twitter that, like, Rich doesn't get any more of those, like, I need this guys. We dealt with 2 years of Dallin Levitt, and that was enough of that was the end of his hall pass cards. Like,
And we've still been dealing with Zane Anderson.
who at least has an interception to his, like, he has an actual positive play to his record. But I mean, yeah, I there can't be any more of those special teams only guys outside of the three specialists on this roster. Like, guys have to have some glimpse of upside at their natural position at this point. And so I curtail that into saying, some people are saying like there's a chance they could keep 5 or 6 linebackers. They're probably keeping 4. Quay, not probably. They're definitely keeping 4. Quay, Edge, McDuffie, Hopper. Who I forgot to add. Hopper, I thought looked solid in his snap. I need to go back and watch him a little closer, but I thought his range was pretty good. I thought he struck downhill pretty decently, and he made some good cleanup plays when other guys missed tackles in coverage. And then after that, if you're really looking for a 5th linebacker, and this isn't to toot your horn, but I'm like, dude, just take Welch at this point because we've at least seen him play passable defense. And the way that I do think Quay is going to be healthy, and he, for the most part, has been healthy other than when he boloed his ankle last year. But Edge missed time with the hamstring and soft tissues. Hopper wasn't healthy all of last year. At the very least, you have a guy who can be tall in the middle of the field. And I know that sounds really harsh, and Welch definitely does more than that, but it's like, I don't need another guy who's still running to Mississauga at this point in time in Simmons, where it's like, dude, you have the hook zone and you ran to the deep third kind of thing and stuff. So,
I will
that
just
was,
say this. If they keep Simmons over Welch like they kept Wilson over Welch last year, they cannot scout linebackers worth a damn there.
yeah. And at least with Wilson, what I gave them the benefit of the doubt there is, at the very least, I thought he was worthy of being like a special teams captain, like level of special teams player kind of thing. With Simmons, it's like, oh, but he's so athletic. But I'm like, but he actually good at special teams? Like, it's it that like that's the one discrepancy I have between the two of them. As I was like, at least Wilson was a good special teams player kind of thing. Like, it's the whole like in theory versus reality thing. It's that whole discussion with Isaiah Simmons. And then on the offensive line, rough day for Donovan Jennings, rough day for Anthony Belton. Belton had a list of penalties so long that Santa's naughty list was given a run for its money.
And
And when
LaFleur
you
was
have
going to
multiple,
break his neck right there on going into
oh,
halftime.
well, yeah, especially because the last illegal formation he got nullified a touchdown, and that might have been, was that Hicks? I gotta look who it. No, no, no. I think it was Fitzpatrick. But yeah, if you ever thought you would see an NFL coach want to RKO one of their players, that was about as close to it as you're gonna get there. But who were your unstellar performers from yesterday's game?
Well, I think you mentioned most of them. Maybe add Jacob Monk in there because he seems to be having a rough last 2 games. Uh, Defensive side, outside of maybe Melton, which is funny to say considering,
Where
he's
he,
just making the transition corner. They have not been very impressed with the guys that they've been throwing out at corner. Now, I haven't been paying close attention, but it just felt like, especially at the first half of this game, that they were doing the whole let it play out in front of you thing. We're going to let them make the catch, but then we're just going to tackle them, whether they get 5 or 6 yards or whatever, instead of actually playing like a man defense like we've seen Halfley do
yeah,
more often than not. And just it didn't look good. So I got to throw that out there just because I mean, even though Melton has been playing good, it makes you wonder, is he playing good because everybody else is playing bad? Or is he actually playing good and, go from there? But I think that's where I kind of stand on it.
I didn't want to take all the bites off the riblet for you before you went, but I agree with you. Like Hayden, for as much of I don't want to say they've touted him, but as much as like the coaching staff has kind of talked him up, and they obviously kept him around almost all of last season on the practice squad, he's had a rough go. I agree with you. Like on one hand, you can tell like in terms of coverage, they are doing some pre-snap games where they're having safeties come down, they're rotating the back end coverage and things like that, but they're not playing a lot of tight. The best plays were the ones where guys were in like some kind of, Melton's pass breakup, Oladapo's pass breakup, both in man coverage or at least in a man match zone setup where they're tracking a guy. But like Hayden was allowing guys to get in back of him. I know a couple were second reaction plays, but still, like, you don't want to see your corner running with his back to the line of scrimmage. And then you compound it with so many penalties. And I did have a bone to pick with the way this game was officiated. I thought that our first drive, especially, they were letting a lot of stuff go to the point where even the Colts, we got the Colts broadcast on our NFL feed, network feed. And it was funny because the Colts broadcast, they started off very, and like, they were good. Like, it's the acceptable homerism from a home team. Like, they're of course, going to talk their guys up. But they were also giving kudos to, like, oh, like Malik Willis looks so much better than when he played for the Titans and stuff like that. But it was funny hearing them go, that's a great play by Lamons, their number 38, their backup slot or whatever. And then as the game progressed, you can hear him going, our guys have been a little handsy, but they're getting away with it so far. And then when they finally got called for one, they're like, they finally got their hand caught in the cookie jar. So it was funny that even they were kind of like, you could feel the Colts broadcasters, like, as the game went on, like, oh, like, we've definitely been given the long leash on this one and stuff. And not that any of the calls on Green Bay were wrong, but if you go back and just watch that first drive, especially the throws to Heath on the sideline, you're kind of like, all right, his shoulder pad is ungarnered.
Yeah.
It doesn't just get that way. And but yeah, I agree with you that, and watching Milton play, there's definitely some technique stuff he has to get with. The biggest one I saw is if you watch the 9-yard completion he gave up when Richardson throws the out route. Melton gave that up because he got caught doing one of the cardinal sins for a defensive back, and that was he's shuffling like he's taking a lead to go steal second base kind of thing. It's like you can't hop step as a cornerback. You've got to either be backpedaling or you have to be in your you have to. But because he was like in midair, like he had shuffle stepped and he's in midair as the ball gets thrown, he had no chance to come downhill and break on that path. And he still ends up, coming in to help make the tackle. But it kind of shows like if his footwork was a little cleaner, maybe he breaks that up, or maybe he undercuts it and can, pick that thing off. But I agree with you that it's a little bit like, is it just that he's the one that's okay and everyone else is bad? But I do want to throw Melton a bone and say, like, no, he's actually playing some solid to good corner. And like, you can tell that like his athleticism does play up there, which is really weird because when you go from wide receiver to playing DB, you go from your whole life is played in forward or drive, and now you have to shift between reverse, drive, and that's where you're like, that's why you don't see a lot of that conversion going that way, is because guys just don't get the footwork down. And the fact that you can see he's improving in it, and but he still has some strides to make, and yet he's still making plays. That's really encouraging for where he could be a little bit later down the season. Like, I don't want to throw the name around lightly, but you could have like by the end of the season, a Sam Shields-ish kind of impact where it's like he's kind of out there on instinct, but the athleticism is going to play up. And the most important thing to me is that the physicality, you see it out of Melton. And I think that's really important for any player playing that position. So I really like seeing that out of him.
And to kind of cover you that way, we don't have him come after you because you just were talking about Melton's athleticism over his ability. It kind of comparing him with Simmons is a lot different. They're two different things. Melton has the athleticism, but he's been able to show the ability.
Yep.
Simmons has the athleticism and hasn't been able to show the ability. So they're two different types of people. We can be okay with Melton's athleticism because of his showing he potential, whereas Simmons, just because he has athleticism, he's not showing he has the ability.
Yeah.
So it
I
there's no way to compare him.
And I think the one thing that helps him is he went from playing the position that his new position is going against. So he kind of understands what routes look like. But I think the other thing I'm really pleased with is you're not seeing him get burned on double moves. He's not over gambling and being like, oh, this is a 3-step route, it's a hitch or it's a slant, so I'm going to jump this all day kind of thing. You're seeing him I don't want to say slow play it, but he is like he's playing disciplined and playing to like his keys and stuff, and he's not just like it's just all like I joke that it's all instinct, but it's not just him gambling and being like, oh, this has to be a hitch, and then it's like, oh, that guy's gone, like behind me, kind of thing and stuff. So I agree with you. Like you can see there's semblance of understanding on his part, where with Simmons, it's like if he's told, he's one of those guys where like you got to give him one role and tell him what to do, kind of thing. And even then, I feel like it's kind of hit or miss. Like because the one I forgot to mention is there was a punt coverage play where the punt returner stumbles, drops the ball, and Simmons gets outflanked to the corner, and luckily Welch is the one who comes from the middle of the field and cleans up the play. But that was one where like you're supposed to be a super athlete and you got juked out of your socks by a guy who dropped the football. Like, uh, I'm just
In
like,
my eyes, I think one of his problems, and obviously I'm not an expert by any means. I think he's trying to play linebacker with the safety mindset. And he needs to get out of the safety mindset and try to get his mind into being a linebacker. And I think that's his biggest issue because he plays like he's not needing the over the top help, or he's playing like he's not needing to stick with a guy or whatever. So if somehow they can make that like click in his head, you're not a safety anymore. You're not a safety anymore. You are a linebacker. Then maybe, potentially, but just I don't think it's going to happen.
he's one of those where like at this point, and I know that practice counts for something. You know, it's not that you can just junk everything that he does in practice, especially when some of his highlights were in the inter squad practice. But I was like, I'd be fine if they cut him and he somehow signs back to the practice squad. I don't know how the. I don't think he has eligibility issues because he's never been on the practice squad, but that's one of those where I'm like, I just can't give him a 53-man spot at this point because if he's going to be up on game days, I need to like, you know, Welch may have a ceiling, but at least he's going to be in relatively the right spots and he's going to tackle well, kind of thing. With Simmons, it's like he might come and make a screaming tackle for loss one play and then be like, who's supposed to be in that zone the next two plays, kind of thing. And
And the two
that's my
guys
concern.
there are completely different because Welch and Melton have no more eligibility as far as I
Right.
know.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
if you're going to bring it down to a decision between those three, and I know Melton plays a completely different position, but if it comes down and you need to cut one of them, are you going to cut the guy that has possibly eligibility for the practice squad, or are you going to cut the guys that doesn't have eligibility anymore?
I'm going so far as to say that I think Melton's safe at this point. I think he's making
Well,
this run
honestly, because there's
slot.
no other depth
Yeah,
right now. That's the
yeah.
main issue.
Because okay, the relative locks are Dixon, Hobbs, Valentine, and after that, I think Melton's been the best of the rest. I think
King has been all right. I don't want to take anything away from
yeah,
him. He's
King.
been all
King to
right,
me,
but
my thing with King is just that you see the limitations hurt him on the field. You see his lack of height and length hurt him at times, and you see his lack of long speed hurt. He gave up one pass where I can't really fault him for it. The ball just went right over the top of him, kind of thing. And he had another one where I don't want to say he was beat, but it was kind of one of those throws where it's in like a handoff between the zones kind of thing. And he just wasn't athletic enough to catch up to the receiver and the ball kind of thing and stuff. So I agree with you. Like, he's a good, like, you can see that he understands what he's supposed to do on a given play. He's a good, heady player, but I'm just kind of like, I just want a little more bang for my buck with a guy making the roster. I do think Robinson has played decently well, and I think that he gets the Goot artificial bump by being a draft pick from this season kind of thing. And you do see his explosiveness and athleticism when he plays. It'll be really interesting, but I think Melton is the fourth best corner on this roster right now. And like
most
you said,
likely.
I don't know how much to jump up and down in celebration about that, but I mean, I
The
think he's
big
safe
thing
at this
about
point.
the big thing about King for me, and this is gonna sound wild when I say this, he has so much of Micah Hyde to him because they followed a lot of the same trajectory their junior year, they were touted as a top first, well, maybe not top, but first round pick, maybe second round pick, you know, great corner, everything else. They decide to come back for another year. Didn't work out quite as well coming back that next year. Go into combine, really blow it at the combine, and you're taken late. If he can kind of fall into that tweener between safety corner, I think he would be all right. But if they're going to rely on him as a pure corner, then I don't think he's going to be as good. But and Robinson, yeah, I think he's going to have the newness factor to him that's going to help. And I think the other thing that helps him is he went to a smaller school compared to the other guys, so there's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for him.
And then last note I have on the DBs is just hope that Omar Brown is okay. I'm not even sure what play he got hurt on, but he's being evaluated for some kind of chest injury, possibly a collapsed lung or something of that regard. And I think he's still in Indy. So
I know
hopefully,
they said it was going to be at least 24 hours.
so you just hope that he's okay and that they can fully diagnose what exactly happened to, because yeah, like I said, I couldn't tell if I know he missed a tackle on one play and I couldn't tell if he got hurt there or if he came. I thought he was back in the game later, so it's hard to say what really happened or where he got injured, but you just hope that the dude's okay, because he's had a really great family night and he's made some plays here and there and stuff. And I know that they've got a bunch of guys in that safety room that they have, obviously Xavier is far and away the front runner, but they've got two guys they've got high hopes on in Bullard and Evan Williams. And then Oladapo, like I said, has come on pretty solidly this preseason after, lagging behind because of injuries last preseason. So just um as we get into the slap happy portion of the episode and I start clicking on bookmark tabs on accident, Joe, any last thoughts regarding, I know you said that you were listening to it more than watching it, and I know you're getting ready to head up to Wisconsin, but any last thoughts on what we had?
Other than I don't think this Irish kicker is going to do so well. I know he kind of redeemed himself later on, but
You can't
I
miss a
guess if
PAT
he's young,
afterwards either. Yeah.
yeah, as long as maybe if he's young enough and they can slap that international tag on him, maybe see if he
I
can,
think that's his only chance right now. Yeah,
yeah.
because
And it sucks in a way because I know everybody is all grateful for McManus, but I still am not a big fan of his because of his off the field shit.
yep,
And I wish they would be able to find somebody who could who could perform better than him and is a better person than him. But it definitely doesn't seem like this McNamee is going to be that guy, unless for some reason this next game he goes off for like 5 for 5 with a 70-yard bomb or something. I don't think it's
yeah.
going to happen.
He is the international player, so I do think that's a worthy use of that spot. Unless you find some like, you know, oh shit, I can't even think of his name right now. They had the first year they had the international player where it's like
Oh
you
yeah,
just find
yeah.
this uber athlete that you're like, yeah, let's see him if he can learn to football kind of thing. And
I was
so,
thinking more of that Moritz Bohringer from a few years
oh
back.
my
That
goodness, that's a blast from the past. But one other thing that I will, so I give credit to Lafleur for like lighting into Belton and some other players and stuff. I also would like to being an ethical hooper and not going for the tie late in the game. Going for that fourth and whatever when they were down three. Like, it's the preseason. We don't want. I know they wouldn't go to overtime in a preseason game, but I appreciate that he was like, "We're gonna win or lose." Not necessarily on this play because they were still on like the 30-yard line kind of thing, but I appreciate it. He's like, nah, like I'm not, I've seen I'm sure part of it was I've seen the kicker kick enough today, but I appreciate that he was like, let's not go for a tie. Let's go for the win kind of thing.
I'm still
So,
surprised they haven't given Daniel Whelan a chance at it because he's got the experience doing it.
right. And I guess the one hesitation they have is he can't hold the ball for himself. Or he can't catch the snap for himself. So I think that's
Drop
the
kick, drop kick.
yeah. That's true. Maybe he'll have to drop kick it. And hey, I'll trust the Celtic cannon for anything at this point. But other than that, the Packers are going to close out the preseason. So,
Seattle,
thank you, Seattle.
because they'll
Thank you,
have
partner.
joint practice Thursday with them, and then they play them. Was it
There you go.
Saturday?
So good. So yeah, in Lambeau, they'll play,
And if
and
anybody's
it's
wondering, I probably will not. I will be in Green Bay, but I don't think I'm going to go to the game because they're calling for like 80% chance rain.
oh,
Uh, now, if it was like a regular season game or like a playoff game, yeah. But if it's just going to be a preseason game, I'm not going to go get soaked in the stands just for
especially not the
preseason.
last game when you're watching the six stringers of each team's
And
bang
knowing
heads
them, if
together.
it
Like,
comes down too bad, they'll just cancel the game
yeah,
anyway. So,
you don't want to see the six stringers play like Rock'em Sock'em robots out there in the rain. So, but
but
I
yeah,
am glad that they're doing more inter squad practices. I always do like the opportunity to play against, you know, not just yourselves, and we don't have to do the, oh, is Rashawn and Lucas looking good because Morgan sucks kind of thing and stuff. So I'm glad we get to, and completely forgot Jordan Morgan, another clean sheet as the left tackle. I know that, and this week the Colts did start their starters, and I
yeah.
know that the Colts don't have like a uber athlete edge or anything like that, but it is nice to see Morgan stack a couple games together with no pressures allowed, no penalties, didn't look overwhelmed physically. I do still have concerns, with, you know, maybe Lucas is just going to turn out to be a 15 sack player, and everyone pump the brakes. I need people to understand what a breakout season for Lucas looks like. A breakout season can be 6 to 8 sacks for Lucas. Like, everyone needs to understand that Rashawn's breakout season was his second year, and he had 5 in the regular season, and then he had a couple more in the playoffs. But like, everyone need, because I know that we're all, and he does look so much better in the practices. The last week's preseason game, you do see the mental and physical improvements he's made. But when he doesn't have a sack for like 3 games, and people are like, "Oh my god, we were lied to," and he's still like, no, you either fudge, what's his name? What was the Mormon that we had recently?
Oh yeah, Kyler Fackrell.
Yeah,
No,
Fackrell. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Fackrell that lucked his way into a double-digit sack season. Like, the most inauspicious multiple three sack game in a season player ever seen on this earth. That, it's the guys who are the freaks at the position. And Lucas may turn into one, but I need Packers fans to understand that if Lucas has a 6 sack season, that's a good season for where he's coming from. But suffice it to say, we've heard Morgan has had trouble with Rashawn and Lucas in practice, and I would like to see him play against someone of that style of play in one of these games, just to see, it's different in a one-on-one. You have different responsibility. It's not just the, like, I have to beat that guy and that guy is just trying to beat me kind of thing. So I do want to see Morgan face one of those kind of athlete physical specimens, but kudos to Jordan for, I don't want to say he's proved us wrong because it's still preseason, but it's good to see that he's not just completely overmatched out. That would have been the worst possible outcome, obviously.
And honestly, I never said that he was going to be a bad player. I just never understood the pick because it's like they're trying to replace a guy that they already had on the roster that was playing well enough. But anyway, before we go, I do want to call this out. I didn't get the audio clip for it, but it's
I teed
another
you up
one.
early in the episode. Yeah.
Um, yeah, this guy, I don't know what the hell is going on over there, but saw the clip from ESPN Milwaukee from good old Kyle Lewis again. You know, he called Jordan Love injury prone. I love me some Kyle or Jordan Love, but he's injury prone. And if you can't say that he's injury prone, then you don't know what you're talking about. I think I do know a little bit of what I'm talking about. He's not injury prone. Has has Yes, he got injured last year with the knee. Okay, came back. He hit his hand on a helmet on his non-throwing hand. If this was in season, he wouldn't even had the surgery. He would have just put a glove
He
on it and went out and
literally
played.
said it. Yes, thank you.
So there's no reason to label him injury. Did you call Brett Favre injury prone? Did you call Aaron Rodgers injury prone? And this is how I know that that this Kyle Lewis is an issue. He said he's been with the team 3 years, and 2 out of the 3 years he's been injured. He's been with the team a lot longer than 3 years, buddy. He's only been starting for 3 years, but he's been with the team a lot longer than 3 years. So now I will give you credit. That could have been just a slip in your mind. You could have meant that he'd only been starting for 3 years, but
It's a pretty big mistake to make. Like, and yeah, like it's such a weird hill to want to die on. Like, just say you don't like the guy. Like,
or
like,
just so you don't know what the hell you're talking about. You're just throwing shit out there so people react to it.
but yeah, and like the way I came at it is I'm like, Aaron Rodgers was injury prone through his first season starting because he was getting hurt when he wasn't even the starter. He had the broken foot, he had the hamstring that knocked him out of the. They had to sign Craig Nall back to the roster because Rodgers got hurt late in one of those seasons. So, and then he had the separated shoulder in 2008 kind of thing and stuff. And not to mention the collarbones, my knee, and all that kind of stuff. And he had the thumb issue his last year as a starter and all.
The
And like,
calf issue, the knee issue,
yeah,
the
like,
ankle issue.
and I forget who it was, but I know it wasn't just one person, but I want to say it was C Tundra Vision who said, like, Brett totally recalibrated what injury prone is for, and we can't even take that at face value because dude was a Vicodin addict. Like, how much of that was truly natural and how much of that was opioids driven, being on the era where you're just concussed all the time kind of thing. I mean, Brett's
Favre
the
did
one.
to injuries what the Patriots and the Chiefs have done with Super Bowls. Everybody
Yeah,
thinks that, they should just play through it, and
yeah.
it's just that easy to do.
The symbolism of Favre's starting streak is the one where he got concussed against the Giants, went out of the game, came back to throw a touchdown, and then
And
went
they never
out of
knew
the
it.
game. And
They thought he
yeah,
was sitting on the bench.
yeah. So, like, excuse us for like, and so many people are saying it. Like, I forget who. There's a bunch of like, and it's bad when like Schneidman and stuff are like, get a load of this shit, quote tweeting. And then you have like Mina Kimes, who else? There's a couple of like the national reporters who are like, the quarter, everyone gets hurt, especially as they keep tacking games onto the season kind of thing. Everyone's getting hurt at this point. And it's like you look at the started games started list, it's like Favre, and then a big chunk to Eli Manning, and then I think Philip Rivers is like somewhere relatively on his heels, and then yeah, like then the list drops off by like 100 games or something like that, and so and like I said, at the very root of you said he hit a hand on a helmet. First off, that fucking hurts. Second
Big
off,
time.
it wasn't his throwing hand, and then before we were even like this was even being discussed, on Thursday when they have the inter squad scrimmage, what does Love come out? Oh yeah, if this was the middle of the regular season, I would have just shot it up and wrapped it and played with it, kind of thing.
Put it in a
Like,
glove. You have a splint.
I
It's not
and
like
I
he's throwing
appreciate
with that hand.
and I appreciate that Jordan is at the point where he has the wherewithal to just kind of laugh at it and take it in stride, kind of thing and all. But I know, like, I appreciate that everyone with common sense and something between some sort of resistant between their ears is like, where what are we doing here?
All I got to say is shut the fuck up. That's all I got to say.
And on that note, I will say please support the channel. Check out the website, ohanapackers.org. Buy some merch. The season's coming upon us. That means Joe's going to be thinking up some new merch as the season goes along, as we have new heroes and guys, stamp their case for how they represent the Packers. I'm sure we'll come up with new stickers, decals, and stuff. Check out all of the articles, Carlos has been on a rampant pace of late. Granted, there's a lot more things to talk about because we have real football, but Carlos has been putting them up and putting them down, and we really appreciate all the work he's doing there. He's head TV or cheese. It's still the
Cheese Talk
preseason.
Pod.
Yes, thank you. Cheese Talk Pod. It's on there as well. Sorry, Brian. Sorry, Brian. Check us out on all the social medias on Twitter at Ohana_Packers, Instagram at Ohana Packers Edition. Search us on Facebook. Please follow the podcast on all your favorite podcasting apps. Give us a like and a subscribe if you're enjoying what you're hearing. And just tell us if you notice there's anything we're leaving out, anything more you want to hear from us, please let us know. We want to make sure we're creating the content you're looking for. The Packers win their first game of 2025. We hope that there's a lot more of those to come in the next few months. But until next time, that's Iowa Joe. I'm Mike. Go Pack Go, and aloha.